Welcome back to Bendy Tip Monday. Today, we're going to kick the kids out of the room and we're going to discuss, do we measure from the top or the bottom? All right, so what I'm talking about is when we set up our material in VCarve, we have a choice of referencing the top of the material or the bottom of the material, our spoil board. And they both have advantages and disadvantages. I'm going to assume that 99% of you out there reference the top of the material, and that works most of the time, but it could pose a problem when we go to do our final profile path. So what ends up happening? So let's say we're going to cut this coffee scoop. We're going to engrave something across the top, and we're going to use 3 bits to do this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a little V-carve to write whatever we're saying we want across the top here. And if we reference the top of our material, it doesn't matter if our material is the wrong size. If we tell VCarve that it's 3/4 of an inch and this is really 0.6 or 0.8 inches, it doesn't matter because this is our 0. We're going to cut down and life is going to be good. So that works. Then we come back for our bowl bit and we reference off the top of our material and we go to cut our bowl. And now things can get a little weird. If the material thickness is perfect, then life is good. If our material is thicker than we thought, then that's not the end of the world. It'll cut and we will have a bowl that is the exact size we want. But if the material is thinner than we told VCarve, then what will happen is it's going to cut down. And let's say we only had 80 thou of space across the bottom, and now our material is shorter. It's going to cut deeper into our material, and we won't have as much left over the bottom, and we might poke through. So that could get us in a little bit of trouble. And then we go to cut our profile path. And this is where I have been annoyed many times. We go and we cut our profile, and I use tabs. I don't have a vacuum table. Big fan of tabs. And if everything isn't set up perfectly, then this is where it tends to go wrong. And this is our most common cut that we use. If our material is thicker than we told VCarve, then when it comes down to cut, it won't come all the way to the bottom. And we end up with that onion skin across the bottom, and our piece doesn't release. Or if our material is a little bit thinner than we told VCarve, then it cuts too deep and leaves some big marks on our spoil board, but our tabs tend to then shift down and become non-existent, and what you thought would hold your piece doesn't. So then you redo it in VCarve and you make your tabs taller so that doesn't happen, and then you end up with these really thick tabs. And thin tabs are awesome because you can just tap them with a chisel and they break right out. So how do we fix this? Well, some people will fix this by referencing the spoil board. And if you reference the spoil board, then that final pass that we're cutting is perfect, because it doesn't matter how thick your material is. If your material is a little too thick, then your first pass of your profile is just slightly more aggressive. If your material is too thin, then your first pass is just a little bit light. And then after that, it works out perfectly. But referencing the spoil board doesn't work when we go to use VCarve bits and stuff like that, because now any errors show up in the top of the material. Our lines, our letters are going to be a little bit too thin or a little bit too thick. So what do we do to fix that? Well, it's really easy. What I propose is that you continue referencing the top of the material. And you do it, but when you switch to your final bit. So here, we're going to have our V bit. We're going to touch off the top of our material. We're going to cut. Then we do our bowl bit. And for the sake of this argument, we're going to touch off the top of this material and cut our bowl. But when we come over to our profile pass, we touch off of this. So this is just a little, exactly 3/4 of an inch thick piece of plastic that I 3D printed. I have them in 1 inch, 3/4, half, and quarter, the most common sizes that I play with. You could 3D print these. You could cut them on your CNC machine, and they become a reference. So now I do this, and when it comes time for this profile pass, I just touch off of this material. And now I know, oh, the 3/4 of an inch that I set in VCarve is going to be exactly 3/4 of an inch. So if this material is a little tall, doesn't matter. Our first pass is going to go. It just might be a little aggressive. And if our material is a little bit shorter, it doesn't matter. It's just going to be light. But that final pass will be perfect every time because you're coming off of something that is the exact height of what you put in VCarve. Now, the nice thing about this too is you could grab another piece of wood and you don't have to remeasure that wood and put that into our software and export some new G-code because that wood is a little bit thinner or a little bit thicker. Heck, you could take a piece of wood that is 1/4 of an inch. And if you had this set up with a 3/4 inch, touch off your 1/4 inch piece of wood, engrave the top. When you go to do your bowl bit, touch off our 3/4. It'll cut air for 1/2 inch, but then we'll do our final little piece at the bottom. And then when we go to do our profile pass, touch off this, and now it'll cut air for 1/2 inch, but do our final cut. It just makes this final pass perfect every time, and you don't have to keep fighting with slight differences in thickness of material and that kind of stuff. Hope that helps and makes your life a little bit easier. Give it a try. If you don't have any of these little blocks, see if you have a friend with a 3D printer. If not, maybe give us a call and see if we can get you some. Good luck.